Ancient Rome, around like 200 BCE, a civilization so confident, wealthy, and secure. But one morning, everyone woke up to find that its most hated enemy had bypassed every defense, crossed impossible terrain, and now was standing at the gates, casting a shadow so dark it fell across the entire Roman Republic. That shadow wasn't an army, but a man, Hannibal Barca, driven by one terrifying motive: vengeance. But when Rome stood on the absolute brink, when they had lost nearly every army they possessed, something impossible happened. The general who had defeated them again and again paused, and in that single moment, Rome found the seed of a terrifying new strategy for survival. This is why Rome almost lost the Punic Wars, and how they overcame the odds. The year is 218 BCE. The Roman Senate felt secure. They controlled the sea, had legions, had geography. For years they believed their foe, Carthage, would follow the rules of engagement. The navy was strong, ready for a conventional assault, and the legions were primed for a fight. But on the other side of the battlefield was a man so hateful that he had sworn himself an enemy of Rome as a boy. Hannibal Barca had no respect for the rules, nor did he care for convention. His singular goal was to ensure the destruction of Rome by any means necessary. Hannibal wasn't just a fighter, but a psychological weapon. One who'd conceived a plan so audacious, it bordered on madness. And so, the nightmare began. Starting in modern-day Spain, he assembled an army, infantry, cavalry, and his fearsome tanks, the war elephant. He looked north, pointed at the Alps, and told them to march. Yet it wasn't a military march, but a defiant race against death. Hannibal wasn't fighting soldiers. He fought mountain tribes, ice, and the paralyzing cold. Nearly half of his 70,000 men melted away in the treacherous conditions. After nearly 5 months, they reached the Italian plains. Those who survived were not beaten, but hardened warriors, fanatical survivors, ready to fight for the general who conquered the sky itself. Finally, news reached Roman General Gaius Flaminius. Hannibal is here. Hannibal is here. But was Rome ready? As panic ensued among the common man, Rome's response, instead of strategic, was arrogant, predictably stubborn, if you will. After years of domination, they believed the legionnaires, their discipline, their experience, made them invincible. But Hannibal was about to teach them a lesson so brutal it was etched in blood for generations. First, came Trevia. Rome sent legions to meet Hannibal head-on. But being a terrain master, Hannibal used rivers. He concealed his cavalry, and in one fatal move, he ambushed them in the icy river. The result was a slaughter. 30,000 Romans dead in just one battle. Then came Lake Trasimene. This wasn't just a loss, but a humiliation. Led by the new Roman consul Flaminius, Hannibal lured them into a narrow passage alongside the lake. His troops, hidden in the hills, were protected by thick fog. As the fog lifted, he gave the order. His men charged, trapping the Romans between the lake and the hills. The result was another slaughter. 15,000 men dead. Even Flaminius himself fell to the sword. In less than a year, Rome lost 2 armies, 2 consuls, and was feeding Hannibal their legionnaires in neat, easy-to-trap packages. But if Trebia and Trasimene were headaches, Canna was the brain tumor that almost killed the empire. By 216 BCE, Rome grew desperate to end the war. They assembled the single greatest army ever assembled, an estimated 80,000 men. And the strategy was simple: overwhelm Hannibal with sheer numbers. But having two consuls rotate daily was a tactical disaster waiting to happen. With only 50,000 men, Hannibal came up with a plan, still considered a masterpiece of military history. Even academics today study his tactics. It was the invention of the double envelopment. With his weakest troops in the center, he put his African infantry and powerful cavalry on the flanks, all of them positioned on a convex crescent facing the Romans. As the Roman juggernaut pushed forward, the Carthaginian center gave way, slowly bending backward. The Romans kept pushing deeper and deeper, forcing a V-shaped pocket. The Romans cheered as the enemy retreated, believing they had won. Then, the unthinkable. Hannibal gave the order, and his flanking troops wheeled inward. The Roman legions were trapped. Once the cavalry dispatched the weaker Roman knights, they closed the circle from the rear. 80,000 Roman soldiers, side by side, unable to fight, unable to move, and unable to escape. It wasn't a battle, but another slaughter. 50,000 to 70,000 Roman soldiers dead in a single afternoon. And now Hannibal had one target left: Rome. Every historian agrees that in this moment, Rome was one decision away from collapse. And it wasn't a decision from a Roman emperor or consul. Had Hannibal marched on Rome, the terrifying population would have likely opened the gates. But that was his most fatal mistake. His army was exhausted and short of siege equipment when he famously remarked, "I know how to win a victory. I do not know how to use one." He hesitated, and in that hesitation, Rome found its salvation. The wait, the boredom, and the time gave Rome time to regroup. Realizing they couldn't beat Hannibal fighting his war, they needed a reset. A reset they found in two brilliant generals. First was Quintus Fabius Maximus. Appointed dictator, he understood that fighting Hannibal head-on was impossible. Then came the famous Fabian strategy, turning it into a war of attrition. Fabius refused to engage in battle. Instead, he shadowed Hannibal, harassing supply lines and destroying crops. But public morale was down, and they called him the Cunctator, or Delayer. But Fabius knew he was doing the only thing that mattered: protecting the last remnants of Roman military structure, buying them one thing Hannibal couldn't afford to lose: time. For a second, Rome could breathe, just long enough for Publius Cornelius Scipio to emerge. Scipio wasn't just a general. He was a young, charismatic genius, daring to do the unthinkable. Instead of playing Hannibal's game, he took the battle to Carthage. He invaded North Africa, and within weeks, the theater of war was back at the doorstep of Carthage. After nearly 20 years, Carthage was in shock, leaving them with no option but to recall a now aging Hannibal to defend the homeland. This final showdown played out in the 202 BCE Battle of Zama. It wasn't just a battle, but the showdown of master versus student. Scipio had been studying Hannibal's tactics and molded them into perfection. So, when Hannibal unleashed his war elephants, Scipio opened his ranks and let them charge harmlessly through. His army of legionnaires wheeled around the rear, enveloping Hannibal's army and smashing them from the rear. The nightmare was over, and Carthage surrendered to Rome. For Hannibal, 2 more decades of statesmanship ensued before he was finally betrayed by the Romans, where he'd end his own life in 181 BCE by taking poison. But what did you think of this incredible war? Let us know in the comments. And always remember, history never dies. It just echoes.